Alright, time for another DraftScience video presentation. So we'll do comments, but I thought I'd start with some more on this, wind-powered car thing that goes faster than the wind, which isn't a surprise because other things go faster than the wind currently, like a sailboat, for example, and stuff like that. So this is a minute and a half version of a description of why. And so I just thought I would do the simple version of maybe this has something to do with it, and maybe this is something to do with how the universe works also in terms of how you can overcome drag. So if there was a wind, you could argue that you're sitting in the wind and you're being pushed by the wind in a direction. If you stay in one place, then it's only one part of the wind, the energy from that part of the wind, that can push you. So it's one vector of wind power, so to speak. And then you stop, transfer the energy, and when you transfer the energy, then you've used up the energy. And there's only a certain amount of ability for the wind to refill the void, create more pressure for you to absorb more weight. And the idea would be is that if you run across the wind, that somehow, that what you're going to do then is collect, the energy and avoid the void part. You collected it, but now you don't have the zero anymore because you left and that you went to a place that isn't zero. You went to a place that's plus, and then you went to a place that's plus, and then you went to a place that's plus, and you went to a place that's plus. So you're gaining more energy because you're avoiding what happens after you transfer the energy, which is you have a clump that doesn't have energy, right? So if this gives away its energy, like two cue balls hit each other, you're dead. You got stuck with this dead piece in the way. And by moving, there's no dead piece. You just keep moving into a new piece of wind. So the fact is that the blades of the propeller, aren't a sail, well, I guess I could have just kept that. So the blades of the propeller aren't a sail just capturing the wind. They're slanted, and so they are, in a sense, hitting the, moving through the air like that. And so in a sense, they're moving to a new position, absorb the energy, new position, absorb the energy, new position, absorb the energy, Now they're losing some of it by not being flat, so they're reflecting some of the energy, but they're gaining more from moving than they are losing from reflections. One could argue, maybe reflections are the problem. Maybe the fact is that some of the energy doesn't transmit into the sail, and therefore it reflects and goes back into your own energy, and that's what you don't want to have happen, so you want to keep moving to avoid that. So there's so many ways to think about this. I mean, it really does require, that's why all the explanations, frankly, are unsatisfactory, is because you really do have to go through every little bit and every little time sequence and figure out why there's an advantage. So anyway, it's an interesting subject for which I don't know how much time I will devote in future, but so we'll play this. I haven't played it yet, and we'll just see what this brief video says, for the better explanation. So I think this is the same guy who did the 4-minute video, and he's still a minute 34, which is too much. So he's got to figure out how to cut it down. 34 seconds have got to go.
Vertasium explains that this car moves forward by pushing air backwards through its propeller, and the propeller is connected to the wheels that drive forwards as the propeller pushes air backward. And so this also means that if the wind gets blown at it from the front, it should drive forwards into the direction of the wind, which inherently also means that if the wind gets blown at it from the back, it should drive backwards also into the direction of the wind and not forwards.
All right, so he's not doing too well in terms of making it a better video, frankly. Too complicated. He should have just stuck with the windsurfer and the idea that depending on your angle to the wind, you can move faster than the wind. You can somehow gain momentum and keep your momentum and force the wind to give you more momentum, even though the wind's moving slower than you are, because you're going across it. So again, the idea that going across it, if I go across it at 60 miles an hour, I'm still going to get the benefit of it. I guess that's a better way of saying it, right? I won't bother drawing it. But the wind's coming this way, and say if I'm going 100 miles an hour, well, I'm going faster than this wind's going. But the fact is the wind is still going to give me energy, because it's going to push me in this vector, and there's going to be a component of this in this plus this. So I'm going to still gain energy by curving in the wind. So I'm going to add to my energy. So it's really just saying the reason why this works is because the propeller blade isn't going with the wind, it's going across the wind. And because the propeller blade is going across the wind, it's able to gain the energy of the wind without the speed consideration. So even though the propeller is actually moving faster than the wind that's pushing, it doesn't change the fact that the wind ahead of him is still moving 20 miles an hour. So if I'm going 40 miles an hour and the wind's going 20 miles an hour, the fact is the wind ahead of me is still going 20 miles an hour. Now, not relative to me it's a headwind, but it's still 20 miles different, okay, than what it would be as a headwind. It's a lot less of a headwind than it would be if I didn't have that 20 mile an hour change or differential from zero. I'm not going into zero wind. I'm going into one that has already got 20 miles an hour in it. So I'm only going into a 40 mile an hour headwind, even though I'm going 60 miles an hour. So in a sense, I don't have the full portion of drag. So that's another way of saying it. There's just so many ways to say it.
Because the propeller would be rotating in the opposite direction. There has to be another source of acceleration that takes it past the speed of the wind, in order for the wind to be coming at it from the front to drive the propeller, which would drive the wheels forward. Once it's past the speed of the wind
So the blades are going across the wind. They're able to go faster than the wind because they're going across the wind. And you're just converting that into the rotation of the wheels. So the blades are going faster than the wind. The speed of the blades are determining the speed of the wheels.
becomes in the reference frame where the wind is rushing at it from the front, then there is no doubt it will be able to sustain its motion and travel faster than the wind. But the question...
So, I mean, all this, you have to realize, okay, first the car has to be pushed to start. So this doesn't work as a way of generating, it isn't self-starting. So momentum has some part to do with this, I would argue. And it may not be sustainable, is the other part. I've seen where windsurfers also push, they move their weight into the wind to gain acceleration. So they create an artificial boost to the wind by changing their body position.
Is prior to this, what was that initial source of acceleration? Could it have been that the ground was slightly inclined in the desert, but due to the lack of day-to-day visual cues, they were unable to notice it?
Oh, so he's changed his theory a little here. So now he's saying it was going downhill. Somehow that might be somewhat of a possibility. But man, that's really reaching. So his previous video was so much better than this because, I don't know if this is a realistic argument to make. That I guess in some sense you're always going downhill, right? Because the Earth is round. So any flat surface is you're at a peak, so to speak, and you have to go downhill. If you go either way you go, you're going downhill, right? Because it's not a flat Earth. So I mean, it might be a plausible argument, but I don't think that's why this car goes faster. I think it's more to do with this sailing argument, this tacking argument, going crosswind. So we added music and pointless dead space, and still it's over a minute. So he could take out the stupid dead space, the music, and he would have made it to the minute he's required to post a minute video. I mean, it's just hilarious. I'm just saying the guy seems pretty smart, and it seems pretty stupid, frankly. So let's see what the comments are. King of the For the Madness, nice video. Well, not very interesting, frankly. Commenters on the internet. Not an interesting name either. Joby. Eek. That's what you call this thing, a Joby? Yuck. I suppose that's some sort of company. Maybe that's paid at. Maybe it's a billboard, and that's just something they decided to put there because they gave them some money. But anyway, yeah. So we'll move on to 2 comments. That really wasn't as good as I hoped it would have been. Nope, it wasn't. All right. So Pinkie Pie. Did that just, it's a little irritating to start, to tell you the truth. Hi, I'm trying to learn and understand these physics. Are you saying that photons, CBR, I'm saying the photons are not something magical. They're just something with a pattern. So the stuff, the Morse code, the dots and the dashes exist in space. And when you put the dots and the dashes in the right order, it spells something. SOS, SOS, SOS kind of thing. You have a pattern. A photon is the code with a pattern. When the pattern's broken, separated from each other, spaced over space or by time, either by its direction, you scatter it, or you change its time by actually making it do something. Okay, so now it's going to be late. It has to powder its nose, or put some blue in its hair, making it relevant to the pinky, some pink into the hair. Then the pattern, when it arrives, it'll either be wrong in time or it'll be wrong in space. It'll land too far away from each other, or it'll, so you'll break the code. So yes, the universe full of energy, some of it is in the right pattern to be called a photon. Most of it ain't. And most of it that ain't is gravity. All right, from a pressure gradient, and this causes gravity. What causes gravity is that you have this energy, all right, this stuff moving the speed of light, and it goes into matter, and when it hits matter, it has to push it. And when it has to push the little electrons and protons, it slows down in the sense it can't push it as fast as it can go. So it can go the speed of light, but when it's pushing an electron, it's going something less than the speed of light. And while it's going less than the speed of light, you have to argue that its momentum has been diminished. And so therefore it's lost energy for the period of time it spent putting blue in its hair. That lost you future. Your life was consumed putting blue in your hair, therefore you couldn't learn physics because you were putting blue in your hair. See? Like your destiny is changed because you can't really do as much stuff in the universe because you had to spend some time putting pink in your hair. So putting pink in your hair used up some of your life, and so you couldn't get your doctorate in physics because you were busy putting pink in your hair. And so the same thing happens to energy in the universe. If it's pushing matter, it's not going to get where it would have been if it wasn't pushing it. If it wasn't pushing it, it'd be way over here. And because it was pushing matter, it's only here. Inverted. So, yes, that's what I'm saying. I mean, the videos are like an hour long, so it's, you want to say I was saying one sentence, drink Coke. No, I wasn't saying drink Coke. I was saying, something a little more complicated. That's what physics is. It's a little more complicated than go put pink in your hair. But anyway. All right, some person called entanglement. Obviously, I think I've said before, you're automatically not going to be very, just like Pinkie Pie, you're going to irritate me just by your screen name. If you're using a light microscope, you can see the reflection of a photon of green light about 500 nanometers. What are you talking about? I mean, you're not saying anything. If you're using an optical telescope, a microscope, obviously the only thing you can see is reflected photons. You can't see the ones that didn't get reflected. Well, actually, optical microscopes usually use the ones that are transmitted. So you're not even seeing reflections, frankly. I mean, an optical microscope doesn't really allow you to use reflections to see objects very well. If you're using your naked eye, it's hopeless. Whatever. Obviously it's not hopeless. It's just that our eye isn't the most sensitive photon detector there is. All right, frogs do better in terms of seeing smaller photons. So you could argue it just has to do with the length of the photon. That a frog can see a very tiny bit of electrical change. We need more electrical change. But let's understand, we're seeing electricity. Now, photographic paper sees photons by changing the chemistry. So by causing oxidation of the silver, whatever it is. I don't know what the exact chemical reaction is. But obviously the energy from the photon enables the compound to change, to ionize, essentially. You're taking out an electron, causing a reaction. But it's the same consequence. The movement of the electron was essentially a kind of electricity, and so it's still kind of electrical. It's like electrical paper. Anyway, you need about 70, 80 photons. So again, who made up these numbers? You made them up. Who makes up these numbers? You don't even know what a photon is, and then you say 70 or 80 of them. You're just making this up. To see green light reflection, and maybe 30 or 40 photons using deep red. And yeah, maybe a photo multiplier will see a pattern we can't see. It's true, okay, but we can see it with a photo multiplier, so we know, what's the big deal here. You just put on your photo multiplier glasses, so to speak, and you can see it just fine. So I don't even understand what your argument is. Sometimes it's better to use cameras than your naked eye. No big news flash there. Some people do a little better. So this is just more bullshit. This assumes the transverse light mode. Yeah, so why would you argue something like that to me? I mean, I'm obviously have no interest in your transverse bullshit. Your fieldy, wavy crapola, I'm saying it's just that, a pile of crap. It's got absolutely no real hard evidence defending it. It's just a made-up pile of shit, like somebody telling me electrons are spinning around, in atoms. There's no evidence of that. I think that's not really what you're asking, though. I don't think I was asking anything. So, quite bizarre that you turn the video into me asking something when I'm pointing out how I think there's statements made in the guy's video that haven't been proven, and that there's plenty of evidence indicating it don't work that way. I'm arguing that particles explains photons quite completely, that you can quantize the particles. You understand the photon is a composite object. It's made of more than one player. It takes time to make a photon, and it takes time to receive a photon. It isn't a blob that hits instantaneously, boom, photon. It's an event that takes place where you're causing an electrical event. And it's electricity that we measure. Even your eyeball is measuring an amount of electricity. You meant, I didn't mean anything, how big is a photon whose transverse wavelength? So again, what's the point of this? Why are you coming on this channel and talking this shit? I have no interest in your transverse bullshit. There's no evidence of any transverse anything. You never demonstrated the existence of anything to be transversing your fields of magical fieldiness. What's a field? A field of what, for fuck's sake? And if you say ether, which you're going to, I'm going to say ether of what? Ether how? Oh, anyway. Is this visible light spectrum? The answer is twofold. Well, fuck you. I wasn't asking for more wacky answers. I already have an answer, a complete answer. I don't need your answer. The transverse component is 500 nanometers of green, whatever that means. The transverse component. By definition, that component has to have more than one component. You can't have something transverse and say it's a thing. Again, you're just calling a transverse is like the word photon. You're describing something that has more than one component by calling it one thing. While the longitudinal, blah, 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 point source component, that's friggin' Ken Wheeler jargon, the point source. I imagine he's saying the part going in this direction is at the granularity of ether. Says you. The granularity of ether. So, which he says is much smaller than even an atom. So again, he's saying that a photon its frequency doesn't have any length to it. And of course it must, because the time has length to it. So it can't be at the granularity of the ether. And impossible to see with normal eyes or optics. You can't see a photon. You can only you see with photons. Okay, you can't see a photon. You see with photons. Sight is made out of photons. You don't get to see the thing it's made out of. But whatever. Take it someplace else. I'm really uninterested in your own theory. I'm arguing conventional theory, which isn't ether mush. Or you can argue my theory, but I'm not here to argue your theory. Alright, Breeze Guy. I was hoping you would make a video covering the latest Huygens optics video. Have you by any chance had a look at my... Yeah, so I didn't get your last email, blah, 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 blah. I don't know why communication is so difficult with people, but apparently it is. Alright, one last point. In the link below, under the section titled Light Tailored to Fit, they claim they have created spiral polarization lenses that demonstrate interference without forcing any light through a slit. Now, obviously, a polarization filter is a slit. So, right away you have to say, what are they talking about? The nature of all these filters, any filter that's filtering polarization, if you're doing microwaves, you're doing anything, you create bars. Bars are slits. So, right there we know, oh, that sounds like nonsense, doesn't it? So, but again, they wouldn't call a beam splitter a slit experiment, when of course it is, because it's openings, and openings are slits. Anyway, wave-like interference from polarization exclusively. So they're not really messing with polarization; they're messing with the fact that they're polarizing filters do in fact break the photons. The energy's still there. That's why you can recover it, right? You can have a filter this way, and no light gets through. You shove a filter between the two going this way, and all of a sudden you have photons back. What happened to the photons? You don't have any expectation that they didn't really get through both filters, right? Because they must have. It's just that they didn't get through in a form that you could see. And all you did was fix them. By putting this filter in, you fixed the ones you broke. And so now you can see them again because you fixed them. But the pieces of them had to still be in the experiment or they wouldn't be there to fix, right? You can sort of understand that part. Fortunately, I knew exclusively. So polarization is only part of it, and then we know that the other part is phase. And so how they make how they do this, this 3D polarizing bullshit isn't all that complicated, because all they do is change the phase. So they put a filter this way on one of your eyes and a filter this way on one of your eyes, and then they just put a clear piece of plastic here. And all that does is create a phase change. So they broke the phase of the photon. So, the filters are breaking the pieces and also the phase by changing the directions. The time it'll take to get somewhere is changed. But yes, the clear plastic does exactly that. It delays the photon. It's changes when it's going to get to the target. It changes the phase. All right. Does polarization have an effect on the double slit experiment? If you use a wave plate, a polarizing filter, and shift the slit's polarization by 90 degrees, this has changed the pattern. As far as I know, no. If not, why not? Blah, 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 blah. I haven't thought about it enough to say. The polarization is just going to change. Again, the polarization filter is just another slit you're putting in. So just understand that if your slits are this way, and you put a polarizing filter in this way, what are you doing? Well, now you're sending pieces this way and that way. So now you're changing which angles you're throwing them at. So it's one thing if you throw the photons, if you scatter them in one dimension, not too big a problem, right? Because you can now got lots of pieces in this area. But if you scatter them in both directions, now you got a big problem, because now the inverse square law takes effect. And now with distance, it's going to be harder and harder putting photons back together, because this distance between them is getting further and further apart. So when you spread them in one direction, it's kind of easy to put them back together. When you spread them in two directions, it's really hard to put them back together. All right. Why do you think these helical spiral polarization plates lenses generate wave-like interference patterns when normal optics do not? So again, you keep saying it like you're I mean, I know maybe you're just talking their language, but it's not a wave-like interference pattern. So there's nothing about waves, and the pattern's not interference, because clearly, as I've pointed out, the math that works recognizes four sources, and the sources are where waves couldn't be. So it's obviously a scatter pattern. But anyway, I know you're just, it's really annoying, frankly. All right, so I didn't really look at this article. I'm sure it's horseshit, but let's go look at it. What the hell? It's all hype and bullshit. So they show us little pretty shapes, blah, 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 blah. Structured light, la, 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 la. So just more, again, each filter, each one of these each thing they put the light through, you have to understand, they don't know what it's doing. And again, they haven't even figured out that an interferometer creates two unequal beams, not two equal beams. All right, so, and then they talk about amplitude. They have all these words, and they're all basically horseshit. So obviously this is just the standard bullseye pattern that you're going to create anytime you create a structure that has holes in it. And obviously, look at all these little holes. So obviously that's part of what they're filtering. They're creating little holes, which means you spread the light in each photon. Each element of the photon goes in a different direction, and when you put them all together, you're going to get that pattern of where you put them back in phase again. So there's just nothing magical about this. So this is just some bullshit illustration. The menu. So I supposed to, what was I supposed to get to? What section of crapola? So they have this thing all spiraling. There's no spiraling. Light doesn't do this. Light doesn't do any of this bullshit. Photons move in a straight line from point A to point B until they hit an electron. They don't change. Blah, 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 blah. So all of these illustrations are all just a pile of crap. All right, so anyway, maybe I'll read some of this. Open challenges and opportunity. Various national photonic strategies have labeled this the century of the photon. with the promise of photonics replacing much of electronics. Yet, despite centuries of effort, we do not have the same control in photonic systems as we have in electric systems. Yeah, because photons are energy, raw, and electricity is electrons, which are a lot easier to manage. The toolkit for controlling structured light, while substantially enriched by recent years, is still mostly empty. Yeah, blue LED. We have few options for compact sources of structured light, few easy available solutions that are not custom made, and few that work at higher power levels or fast switching rates. Well, I'm sure photons can do pretty fast switching rates, but yes, it's the whole idea of you can't make a single photon wire. You can't make a wire. You can't make photons. Okay, that just go in one direction in any other way, but besides making well out of waste. Okay, at present we deploy a structured light solution. The user must be a structured light expert. That's akin to asking microscope users to first design their own objectives. So I guess I mean lenses. Yet it has never been easier to get started with structured light. Oh, well, whatever. Blah, 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 blah. So, all this hype, and they pretty much have a big downer at the end. All this is a kind of a bunch of bullshit. Okay, yeah, I agree. It's all a bunch of bullshit. Alright, so like I said, well, maybe someday when I have time to put pink in my hair and do other silly things, I'll read the rest of that article, but not today. Alright, so this guy, Zach Ellis, the author just had to mention gravitons to go faster than the speed of light. So the author is Holton Arp, so this is, old stuff, and, he was sort of a famous dissident. Don't believe the leap was necessary, otherwise support for space as flat and not bent curved by mass. Whatever bent curved would be, however you bend nothing. Space is nothing, how do you bend nothing? So again, it's just whatever. Also, as mentioned, a variable mass system theory. Sorry if this is useless comment, and linked to you, it may be. In the sense that I've already fixed Lesage gravity. I've already added the elements you need to fix it, and the understanding you need to fix it. So I don't need Holton Arp's input. Now, Holton Arp's is, like I said, there's some things to appreciate. I mean, he was an astronomer. He disputed the idea that redshift was being produced by velocities, and he kind of pointed out it's more something intrinsic. I don't think he explained how it was intrinsic very well. My argument, I think, is a better argument that photons end up having their frequency redshifted because photons have to travel through space, and by traveling through space they now and then hit little tiny atoms of hydrogen and helium and oxygen, which are all transparent atoms actually, and so they're retransmitted, but they, because of Compton's scattering, they lose a little bit of frequency, so they get their frequency changes because they hit a little tiny bit of transparent matter on their trip, and that little bit of matter degrades their frequency. So if you got to travel through more space, then you end up being more redshifted. I think that simple explanation covers that one. Now, anything that speculates about anything moving faster than the speed of force, all the forces, is kind of nonsense. Holton Arp was under the impression that somehow gravity has an instantaneous component, and I think we know it doesn't have an instantaneous component. It does move the speed of light. If the sun blows up to, right this second now, it's going to be 8 minutes before we know about it, okay? The light's not going to get here for 8 minutes, and the gravity's not going to get here for 8 minutes, the change in the gravity. The Earth isn't going to start going straight for 8 minutes. So it's not going to know there's no gravity, because the gravity is already on its way. It takes 8 minutes for the reflection of the energy from the universe that comes out of the sun for it to do that. Everything the sun, I'm just saying everything, all forces, there's no force moving faster than the speed of light, and it's just kind of, in my opinion, delusional to come up with any possibility for any such thing, because nature would have already capitalized on it, especially evolution. If there was something moving faster than the speed of light, evolution would have already figured it out, found utility in exploiting the knowledge you could gain by that force. Because any force that moves faster than the speed of light will tell you things that are going to happen, just like light tells you things that are going to happen. And so it would be an advantage to know things sooner. Know what's going to happen sooner because of the energy field that you can read. So anyway, I just, so right for that reason, no good. Like I said, it's interesting. I didn't realize Holton Arp opined on all these subjects, so that part was a little bit interesting. But it also diminished his standing in my brain a little bit, just because it all sounds a little bit too simplistic and it's not very detailed, and he doesn't really account for, it even has expanding Earth in it, which is just like, oh please, the planets aren't getting bigger. Come on, too silly. Anyway, so blah 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 blah. Thanks, but yeah, no, what can I say? Sort of an interesting read, but it really isn't relevant because I already have a theory, frankly, that works. I don't need to fix it. So anyway, unless somebody comes up with a really good, some more stuff about drag and different ways to get around these different little problems that come up. But I already, like I said, I already have enough of a theory that I don't really need to add anything to it. Not to explain the basic functions anyway. Magnetism's a little tricky just because that's another pattern matching thing, but yeah, so completely different subject. All right, so I think that covers it. So I will just point out California Institute of Technology filed a copyright claim on one of my Feynman videos, just one of them. So I have numerous videos where I'm playing clips of Feynman, and just one of the videos they filed a copyright claim against. And I was trying to figure out why they would do that. I could sort of understand that, okay, some marketing company owned the Feynman lectures. I could sort of understand where, okay, maybe they want to get all the other pieces of Feynman on the internet off the internet so they can have the exclusive rights to it and put ads on it or something. But I really don't think the California Institute of Technology is doing that, right? So I'm just wondering whether whether this was a blanket claim. It's a year-old video, so obviously they did something recently to say we're going to do this. Or it's just some petty butthole. They're butthurt because I pointed out how Feynman's full of shit. And they don't like that. And so they want to censor my speech. They want to shut me up because I'm saying something they don't agree with. And this is a college, California Institute of Technology, well-established, prestigious, big money. And this is how petty they are? So yeah, I really want the backstory. I really want to know. I'd like to know what happened, because I can't really see how they could care about other people posting clips of Feynman. It's not big money. You're not going to make $1 million off of those Feynman lectures. You're just not. And so I can't see them doing that, because even that looks bad. It's bad in so many ways, right? Again, if this was his kids or something and they were looking for more money, you could say, oh, they're just crass assholes. But this is the California Institute of Technology. Again, what would be its motivation? Would it think that Feynman would want you to file copyright claims, that he would want you to censor him even, prevent people from even just publishing his videos. You'd want to do that? You'd want to file a copy? Like if I just played the video without commenting, I wonder if they would have filed the claim. And if they did file the claim, why would they file it? I'm not making money off of it. I'm posting it clearly for educational purposes, and I'm saying Feynman is worth listening to. And they think they're doing Feynman a favor by censoring Feynman? Again, I'm just saying that all these people that own other people's legacy, they never ask their question, what would Feynman say? I wonder what Feynman would say to the California Institute of Technology for filing this copyright claim. Anyway, so I of course counterclaimed. In 2 weeks the video will be back up, because they're obviously not going to take me to court, because I obviously satisfy all the standards of fair use. I haven't distorted, I am not maliciously using it, I am using it for the purpose of counter argument, and I'm not making any money off of it. So I think clearly it's fair use. And it's clearly not diminishing the value of somebody else's copy of Feynman. I mean, clearly nobody's going to watch the Feynman movie on my channel because I'm talking more than Feynman's talking. So, but, if they did it, just because they're butthurt that I'm making a counter argument, that's really disgusting. That they're just trying to censor me now. But anyway, I would like to know the truth. So if anybody has any info on other videos, other Feynman videos disappearing, I think they're the old videos. This one's from the 60s. I think that's what the video was a response to. It was just called something like a DraftScience versus Richard Feynman Basic Physics, I think was the title. And I think the basic argument was in the 60s version. I think. But I can't say for sure. I mean, there's two piles, and I think they're owned by different people. So I think the California Institute of Technology owns either the 60s, the ones made in the 60s, or the ones made in 1980 or something. But anyway. Just part of what a hassle it is to be on the internet now. I mean, it's just people have turned into such petty pieces of crap. Ugh. Anyway, enough of video, yeah? Yeah, I think so. Alright, so, prepare to say, so long. Yeah, so till the next time and such. If you have any suggestions for 1-minute videos, I am going to be doing units, and then I'm going to be doing time dilation, and then photons some more, and then speed of force, and then can't remember what the other couple of things are. But anyway, suggestions welcome. So this has been a DraftScience video presentation. I'm just running it through my, the fact that people really don't want me to make these videos. They really think it's somehow I'm breaking some rule because I'm opining. I'm suggesting I'm offering my opinion as a viable piece of reasonable rhetoric, reasonable statements about reality. It's just, it's just surprising that people are this retarded. But anyway, until the next time and such.